This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good morning, Rabbi Glatstein. Welcome, everyone. We are going to break up the share into two parts. We're going to do one little point on Lamed Dalet Amud Aleph and one point on Lamed Dalet Amud Beis. Both points we mentioned when we were learning the blot, but we'll try to delve in a little bit more. The Gemara in Lamed Dalet Amud Aleph ultimately said that the reason why, if you have two women and they got mixed up, you could be chayiv for Eishes Ish, Eishes Ach, Achos Isha, and Nida, and we say Isser Chalal Isser, is that we're talking about a scenario where all four Isurim are Chal at the same time. And in the Shita of Reb Shimon, meaning in Reb Yosi, maybe you could play around with Isser Koilel and Isser Moisef, but Reb Shimon doesn't hold of that. So in Reb Shimon, the only way to have all these Isurim be Chal is if you say Isser is Chalal Isser bevas achas. So the Gemara says, I understand, Eishes Ach, Achos Isha, Eishes Ish are all Chal at the same time. Let's say two brothers, they appointed a shliach to marry them off to two sisters, and the shliach met the shliach, so the marriage to these two women happened simultaneously, and therefore each woman could be Eishes Ach, Eishes Ish, Achos Isha, all at the same time. But how do you have Nida happening at the same time? Because if she first became a Nida, then Nida is Chal, and the other three Yisurim are not Chal. And if she became a Nida after, the three Yisurim are Chal, and the Nida is not Chal. So the Gemara says, scratch that. We're talking about the following case, where you have two brothers, they were both born on Rosh Hashanah. They were born in year 1. And you have two girls born on Rosh Hashanah in year 2. And 13 years from when the boys were born, which is 12 years from when the girls are born, they all become of age. She started bleeding and gushing before they became of age. And Rashi explains that the brothers married the girls before they all became Gedolim, with a Tanai that it won't be Chal until tomorrow when they become Gedolim. So the Isser Nida is Chal when they become Gedolim. The marriage is Chal when they become Gedolim. So the Nida and the Eishes Ish and the Eishes Ach and the Achos Isha, they're all Chal simultaneously. If I could direct your attention to the fourth wide line in Rashi, on Lamed Dalet Amud Aleph, Umitoch Yud Beis La'achar Yud Beis L'Chiyuvei Inhu, and they started bleeding within 12 years until after 12 years to be mechayiv these two women. Shehoisha ba l'chlal onshim bas Yud Beis shana v'yem echad. A woman comes to Onshim at 12 years in one day, v'hazachar l'yud gimel v'yem echad, and the male from 13 in one day. Umishkachas la, you have a case, you could find the case that all these Yisurim are Chal b'vas achas, shenoldu hazacharim be'echad b'tishrei, the males were born on Rosh Hashanah, v'anekevas be'echad b'tishrei l'shana haba, and the women are born Rosh Hashanah the next year. U'v'yoyim echad mishlam yud beis l'nekevash and yud gimel l'zacharim, and on one day, there are 12 for the women, which are 13 for the men. In other words, on the same day, the women become 12, the men become 13. Okay, now look at this. Let me just read that one more time. Ubiyoim echad, and on the same day, mishlam yud beis l'nekeva shein yud gimel zacharim. The 12 years are complete for the females, which are the 13th, which is year 13 for the males. Now, what day is that the 12 years is complete for the females and the 13 for the males? What day is it complete? L'chayra, he means Erev Rosh Hashanah, going into the 13th year for the females and the 14th year for the male. Right? But what does it mean? Ubiyoim echad mishlam. On the same day, it's complete. Year 12 for the women, year 13 for the men. Umasru Kidushin, and they gave a Kidushin, sheyechoilu, that it should be Chal, liyoim ha'machros, on the next day, kishehi nasin gedolim, when they actually become a Gadol. Diyoim echad b'shnas yud gimel, but inan l'nekevas, you need one day in the 13th year for a female, and one day in the 14th year for a male. So Rashi seems to be saying that the day the marriage was given was the day the women completed year 12 and the year the men completed year 13, and they gave the Kidushin that it should be Chal the next day when they become Gedolim. Yeah? That's how Rashi learns. Now, what's the Groisa Gadol, and what is the significance of the day that 12 years is complete for a female and 13 for a male? I mean, nobody celebrates their bar mitzvah. Let's say someone was born on Chaf Vav Tammuz. Their bar mitzvah is not Chaf Hey Tammuz. Their bar mitzvah is they have to be basically into the 14th year. But Rashi seems to be saying they gave Kidushin on Yom de Mishlam, the day the year was complete, and they're not a Gadol yet. They're not a Gadol until tomorrow, and they stipulated it should be Chal the next day. That's Rashi. So, sort of knowing somewhat of the answer, you could ask, what in the world is Rashi making? Why does Rashi have to say that they gave the Kidushin on that day? Why doesn't Rashi say they gave it when they were 11 and a half, and it's not going to be Chal until they're a Gadol? Did Rashi just randomly pick the case where they gave it on that? Fine. So we spoke out when we were learning it. The big question here is that since the Ma'aseh Kidushin was done before they became Gedolim, it's worthless. So who cares that they stipulated it shouldn't be Chal until they become a Gedolah or a Gadol? But nevertheless, the act was done at a time that they're not capable of rendering any kind of halachically sanctioned procedure. So why does it have any significance? So this is a question all the Rishonim deal with, and many Achronim deal with, including the Mishna Lamelech. And let's see the Keren Orah. B'shoifas mitoch Yud Gimel la'achar Yud Gimel. Perish Rashi shenoldu kulam b'yamecha. They're both born on the same day. Rak ha'anoshim kidmu shana achas. The men were born a year earlier. V'nishlam gedulasan ke'achad. They both became a gadol together. Uv'yay mishlam Yud Gimel l'zacharm v'Yud Beis l'nekevos masru Kidushin. And on the day that year 13 was complete for the men and 12 for the women, they gave a Kidushin she'choylu l'yam ha'machas that should be Chal for the next day. V'hikshu at Toysus asks on Rashi, Haloi matzi lakadesh ad sheyagdil. You can't do Kidushin until you become a Gadol. So, and in that case, if you can't do Kidushin until you become a Gadol, that means the Nida was Chal before the Kidushin. Right? Because she becomes a Nida as soon as she becomes a Gadol, and the Kidushin did not happen yet. Vimkena kati nidon kadam. Now we could judge which one comes first. Now, the Rashba compares this case to the following case. You have two Gerim. We'll call them Tony and Stephanie. And they're on their way to become converts. And Tony says to Stephanie, Hare ad mikudeshes li lamachar kisha'anu megairim. I am marrying you tomorrow. Here's the money. Let's be married tomorrow after we go to the Geras process. So it's a machloikis whether that works. The Rabbanon say it doesn't work because ein adam makna davar shaloi bala olam. Guess who says it does work? I'm sure you know by now. Rav Meir, of course. Rav Meir holds adam makna davar shaloi bala olam. Rav Meir shita you could be makna something that's not in the world. So even though my achrayus to you and my responsibility to you is not extant because we're not Jewish, but we will be. So Rav Meir holds it's a good Kidushin. So the Rashba says this case of Rashi is analogous to two Goyim who want to get married tomorrow for when they convert. The Rashba says to give Kidushin today, on the day that it's complete, that should be Chal tomorrow. Be'ez gadlus loy mahani dava kamay la'achar she'ez gayer. Now the censors put in biyomim hakadmoinim in the olden days. Nowadays, obviously, a Gentile would never convert, but back in the day, the censor put in when there is something called conversion, there's a machlek. It's v'tali b'plukta d'Rameir v'Rabbanan, b'la'achar shes gayer, l'Rab Meir shaper chal Kidushin, la'achar gedulasan.
With Geirus, isn't it, it's a new person, so you could be mechalik between Geirus and becoming a Gadol.
Okay. But the problem with the Geirus is, I can't be makneh something to you that doesn't exist.
Besides a kinyan, it's a new person now, so they weren't even what after the Geirus, what they are today is completely different what they were yesterday. By a Katan and a Gadol, it's the same person. It's just now that there's the Chiyuv there, but it's the same person. By Geirus, it's a completely different person. It's a new neshama.
Okay, good. But the Gemara says that it's dependent on this Nakuda, whether Adam Makna Davar Shalai Bala Olam. So, if it's dependent on that Nakuda, according to a mayor that you can, then Kol Shekain that you can over here, right? So that's the Rajah. The Rajah wants to be make it wants to be toilet and machlokes for Meir and the Rabbanan. Comes the Mishna Lamelech, and the Mishna Melech herech l'kaim perish Rashi. The Mishna Melech wants to be Mekayim Rashi Shita because, as you know, we never paskin like Rameir. So since we paskin ein adam makna davar shlah bala olam, so then how could this situation work where they're agreeing to be married tomorrow when they become of age? Says the Mishna Melech, the Baha afilu rabbanon moeded the Talan HaKidushin kiven the enam chazar ma'isa elazman. The Mishna Melech wants to be mechalik the other way, that by Geiros, where what's lacking is a Maisa, so then the Rabbanon say you can't be Makna Davar Shalai Bala Olam. But here, the item that's Loi Bala Olam will come into the Olam automatically without a Maisa just through the passage of Zman. So even the Mishna Melech wants to say, even the Rabbanon would agree that in this scenario, where you're only lacking Zman, it's a Mum Oiver, it's going to happen automatically, then you could be Makna and you could get married. But comes the Keren and he says, in his humble opinion, even Reb Meir would say that this Kidushin should not work, very simply because when you have two Goyim, they're both B'nai Das, they're both of intelligence. So their act is an act, they're just not B'Toras Kidushin. So okay, fine. So they could stipulate that we're doing a Maisa now, it's an intelligent act, it shouldn't be Chal until tomorrow when we're capable of making a Kinyan. But by Ketanim, where their Maisa is empty, it has no meaning, it has no significance, they're not B'nai Das, then whatever they do as a Katan is worthless, so then how could they do a Maisa now and say it should be Chal tomorrow, the Maisa doesn't have any value? Ulani is daiti oyonir dafil Rameir, the Amar Adamakna Davar Shal Balam, Hacha Moide the Kidushin Lav Klami. The Al Karchach Loi Kama Rab Meir Ela Bebar Das. Rab Meir only says Adam Makna Davar Shaloi Bala Olam if you're of Das, the Kinyanai Kinyan, where you could make an acquisition. Ela Da'ata Lav Bar Kinyanu. Just there is a exclusion that you're not capable of rendering a Kinyan because a Goy is Lav Bar Kidushin. So when you say La'achar Shes Gayer, the Kidushin is Chal. But here by a Katan, that his Amira is worthless, his Kinyan is nothing. How could you do a Maisa now to be Chal later? The Maisa is empty. Kiven the Amira Serlav Klamai. The Amira is not a significant Amira, it's a empty Amira. So I want to share with you the Keren quotes the Mishna Lamelech, who has a very novel pshat. And the way I read Rashi to you, Rashi seems just to be saying it. It's just something that I don't think we ever heard before. And that is, there is significance to the day that you finish your 12th year for a woman and the 13th year for a man. You're not a Gadol yet, but you finished the year. It seems like, okay, you finished 12 years, you're a bar das, it's just, you can't render a Kedushin. And that would be why Rashi's emphasizing that it was done beyond the Mishlam, on the day that it was complete. But Mishlam Melech Kosav Liyashev, B'shitas HaTorah Divrei Rashi, B'shmaitin, The Mishnah writes to answer the Shita of the Torah in Rashi in our Gemara, the Misham Hachi Kasav Shemasol Kidushin B'Yoyma de Mishlam. This is why Rashi said he gave Kidushin on the day that it's complete. The Hasaroi Shehivia B'Yoyim Zeh, the hairs that you bring on that day, Mahanila, it helps, Liois Gedoyla Achar Hayom Hazeh. The hair that you bring on the day that you complete your 12 for the girl and your 13 for the boy, helps to make you a Gadol tomorrow. That's the Chidush of the Mishnah in Rashi. And just the simple words of Rashi seem to be saying that. Otherwise, why does Rashi make note of the fact that it happened on that day? It could have happened a week before or 6 months before. But says the Keren, Vu Davar Chadash, this is a novelty. V'lematzasi ke'es misha oimar kain. I never found anyone else who says something like this. V'toicha perach kila'achar ha'perek, mashma delegamri kila'achar ha'perek dami, u'gedoy lehi miyad, u'chumay toicha zman kila'achar zman. In other words, if you're going to say that day you're like a Gadol, then you should be like a Gadol and you're a full-fledged Gadol. But what is this concept that we're splitting hairs and we're saying that it helps to render the act an act, although you are limited in creating a chalois, and that you stipulate will be chal till tomorrow? Okay, so that's the Mishnah Lamelech's Pshad in Rashi. Okay, I want to take you to Lamed Dalet Amud Beis, and we're going to actually split this up. That will make it more even.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.